When Mark Consuelos slid into a seat beside wife Kelly Ripa to become the permanent co-host of Live, fans thought it would be smooth sailing. After all, the couple had already proven their on-screen chemistry countless times during guest appearances. But television is rarely that simple. Within months of officially joining, Mark found himself in an unexpected position, pleading with the show's producers to make a major change, one he believed was critical not just for the show's survival, but for his own sanity. The honeymoon phase. In the early weeks, everything sparkled. Viewers tuned in to watch the real-life married couple banter about everything from parenting mishaps to Hollywood gossip. Ratings climbed. Social media buzzed with memes of their playful spats. Mark looked like he was having the time of his life. But behind the laughter, cracks were forming. Mark had underestimated how different it was to visit the set as a guest host versus living there as the co-host every day. What felt like light-hearted banter during short stints suddenly became exhausting when it was a 5-day-a-week commitment. And worse, he was starting to feel boxed into a role he hadn't signed up for. The breaking point. One morning in mid-July, after a particularly awkward segment involving juggling flaming torches, Mark had to politely bow out while Kelly teased him for his delicate hands. He retreated backstage and confided to a producer. "I can't do this like this anymore. Something has to change." It wasn't the juggling or even the teasing that pushed him over the edge. It was the format. The show's daily routine, chat at the desk, celebrity guest, cooking segment, light game, repeat, felt suffocating. Mark worried the show was leaning too hard on gimmicks rather than genuine connection, and as a result, both he and Kelly were working overtime to inject spark into tired material. Mark's vision. So, what exactly was he begging the producers for? A shift in focus. Mark wanted Liv to lean into authenticity. He proposed carving out a longer, more open-ended segment where he and Kelly could have unscripted conversations, not just about their lives, but about topical issues, pop culture moments, even silly debates that played to their chemistry. Instead of spending 5 minutes with a celebrity plugging a film, Mark imagined deeper chats that felt less transactional and more like hanging out with friends. He also pushed for the show to embrace interactive elements, live audience Q&As, polls, even fan-submitted stories that could spark discussion. As he told the team, "People tune in for us, not the Blender demo. If we let them in on more of the real stuff, our marriage quirks, our mistakes, even our arguments, they'll stay with us." Tension in the control room. The producers, however, weren't immediately on board. The formula of Live had remained steady for decades because it worked. Ratings were consistent, advertisers were happy, and daytime TV thrived on predictability. Why mess with success? But Mark wasn't letting it go. He grew more insistent in meetings, at times surprising even Kelly with how passionate he became. At one pitch session, he reportedly banged the table and said, "I left acting gigs, I left projects for this. If I'm going to sit in this chair every day, we need to make it ours. Otherwise, it's just going to burn me out." That candor made the room fall silent. Producers exchanged nervous glances. No one wanted to risk alienating the new co-host, especially one who also happened to be married to the show's biggest star. Kelly's role. Kelly, ever the professional, walked a tightrope. She loved her husband's enthusiasm but also understood the delicate politics of network television. She had seen co-hosts come and go. Michael Strahan's sudden exit, Regis Philbin's legendary tenure, and she knew how high the stakes were. On air, she joked about Mark already trying to take over my show, but privately, she supported his ideas. She agreed that audiences were craving more honesty and less polish, especially in an era when social media had trained fans to expect rawness. "Let's at least try it," she reportedly told the executive producer after one heated debate. "What's the worst that could happen? People see we're human." The test run. The compromise came in the form of a test week. Producers allowed Mark and Kelly to stretch their opening chat from 10 minutes to nearly 25. Instead of rushing to a cooking demo, they spent the time telling an unscripted story about a disastrous family vacation. The result? Ratings spiked. Clips of the segment went viral on TikTok, with fans commenting things like, "This feels like hanging out with my favorite married couple," And finally, morning TV that's not fake. Encouraged, producers began quietly adjusting the format. The cooking demos didn't vanish entirely, but they became less central. Games were streamlined. More energy went into letting Mark and Kelly riff. Mark's gamble pays off. Within months, Mark's gamble had paid off. Viewers responded to the authenticity he'd fought for, and critics noted that the show felt looser and more alive than it had in years. Still, the battle wasn't without fallout. A few longtime staffers grumbled about the changes, feeling that the show was veering too far from its traditional identity. But with the ratings bump undeniable, most accepted that the experiment was working. And for Mark personally, it was a victory. Not only had he secured a format that felt sustainable, but he had also proven himself as more than just Kelly's husband sitting in a chair. He was shaping the show's future. The bigger picture. Mark's push reflects a larger trend in television. Audiences today crave authenticity. In a world oversaturated with content, viewers connect most deeply with personalities who feel real, not overly scripted. By insisting on this change, Mark tapped into a cultural shift that could help keep Live relevant for years to come. Of course, in true daytime TV fashion, the story isn't over. Behind the scenes, negotiations continue about how far to push the new approach. But for now, Mark has bought himself breathing room, and perhaps more importantly, the respect of the show's production team. The final word. When asked recently if he had any regrets about pushing so hard so soon after joining, Mark smiled and said, "No. If you love something, you fight for it. And I love this show. I love sitting next to Kelly every morning. But I also want to make sure it stays fresh for us and for the audience. That's worth a few battles in the control room." In the end, Mark Consuelos' plea to the producers wasn't just about changing a show segment. It was about redefining what live could be in a new era, funny, messy, unpredictable, and above all, real. And if the early numbers are any indication, viewers are more than ready for it.